In September 1978, American television tried something it had never really attempted before. A full hour of space warfare, alien enemies, and a fleet of survivors searching for a planet called Earth. The similarities to a certain film from the year before were impossible to ignore, and 20th Century Fox actually took the studio behind this show to court over it. Today we're going through this cast, one by one, to find out where their real lives went once the fighting on screen finally stopped. Lorne Greene, who played Commander Adama. By the time this show cast him, Greene had already been 3 or 4 different kinds of famous, and Adama was almost an afterthought on top of everything else he'd already built. He was 63 when the show premiered, born Lyon Hyman Greene in Ottawa, Ontario on February 12, 1915, the son of Russian Jewish immigrants. His father was a shoemaker. Commander Adama held the fleet together with nothing but calm authority. Lorne Greene had been doing exactly that for an entire country before television ever found him. Here's what most fans never connected. As a wartime radio newscaster, Greene's grave delivery of bulletins about Allied losses earned him the nickname the Voice of Doom, years before Bonanza made him a household face as Ben Cartwright, a role that reportedly paid him around $50,000 an episode at its peak. Then, in 1964, at the height of Beatlemania, Greene did something almost nobody expected from a Western television star. He released a spoken-word record called Ringo, and it hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, genuinely outselling half of what the actual British invasion was putting out that December. He married twice, Rita Hands from 1938 to 1960, and Nancy Deal from 1961 until his death, and had 3 children, including a daughter, Jillian, who later married director Sam Raimi. He died of pneumonia following ulcer surgery on September 11, 1987, at 72, in Santa Monica, days after appearing at a press conference announcing a Bonanza reunion pilot he never lived to film. The Voice of Doom, Ben Cartwright. Commander Adama, a #1 record charting against the Beatles. Lorne Greene was never just one legendary man. He spent his whole life being several of them at once, right up until the week he was still promising he had one more homecoming left in him. Jane Seymour, who played Serena, the woman Commander Adama's own son fell in love with. Seymour was barely on this show long enough to unpack her bags, and it turned out to be one of the smartest career moves she never actually wanted to make. She was 27 when the show premiered, born Joyce Penelope Wilhelmina Frankenberg in Hayes, Middlesex, England on February 15, 1951, the daughter of an obstetrician and a Dutch-born nurse. Serena was written to die quietly in the pilot and disappear from the story entirely. Jane Seymour had other plans the moment the network saw how audiences responded to her. Here's the negotiation almost nobody knows about. When Serena tested well with viewers, producers wanted Seymour to stay on as a series regular, but she wasn't interested, until her fee was raised significantly, at which point she agreed to return for 2 more episodes on one condition: that her character be given a proper, memorable death instead of a quiet one. She'd already made international headlines 5 years earlier as the Bond girl Solitaire in Live and Let Die, and went on to win an Emmy and 2 Golden Globes, most famously as the star of Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman, where she met her 4th husband, James Keach. She has been married 4 times and has 4 children. She is 75 today, an OBE, and still working. Serena got the dramatic death scene the writers finally agreed to give her. Jane Seymour got the paycheck that came with negotiating it, and quietly built the biggest career of anyone connected to this entire cast. Richard Hatch, who played Captain Apollo, the man Serena married before this show killed her off. If Seymour walked away from Battlestar Galactica without a second thought, Hatch never really left it at all. He was 33 when the show premiered, born Richard Lawrence Hatch in Santa Monica, California on May 21, 1945, and had already built a career on the soap opera All My Children before Glenn Larson ever called. Apollo was the son every commander wished he had. Richard Hatch spent the rest of his life trying to give this franchise the second chance it never got to have. What most fans never realized is that Hatch spent nearly 2 decades personally campaigning to revive Battlestar Galactica, self-funding a trailer in 1999 called The Second Coming to pitch a sequel, before eventually landing a very different role, the political prisoner Tom Zarek, in the 2004 reimagined series. He married Jo Maria Distante. The couple separated not long after their son Paul was born, for reasons the family kept private, and he later dated Sophie Laporte, his co-writer on that that same pitch trailer. He died of pancreatic cancer on February 7, 2017, at 71, at his home in Santa Clarita, his son Paul by his side. Apollo never stopped believing Earth was still out there to find. Richard Hatch never stopped believing this show deserved to find it too, and very nearly willed a second life into existence through sheer persistence alone.
Maren Jensen, who played Lieutenant Athena, Adama's only daughter. Where Hatch spent decades trying to hold on to this franchise, Jensen walked away from Hollywood almost entirely, and what she built instead is the one story in this cast most fans have never heard at all. She was 21 when the show premiered, born Maren Kavehilani Jensen in Arcadia, California, on September 23, 1956, and had been modeling for Vogue and Cosmopolitan while studying theater at UCLA when an agent spotted her. Athena was written tough enough to fly beside her own father. Maren Jensen arrived on set, by her own account, with almost no real acting experience at all. Here's the second act: almost nobody connects to her. Not long after the show ended, Jensen was diagnosed with what was then called Epstein-Barr syndrome, now understood as chronic fatigue syndrome, and it ended her acting career at its peak. Rather than disappear, she turned to the beauty industry, and in 1993 co-founded Stila Cosmetics with makeup artist Janine Lobel, a brand that became one of the defining prestige names of the decade, sold in Sephora nationwide, and was eventually bought by Estee Lauder. She'd also spent years in a relationship with Eagles guitarist Don Henley, staying together until 1986, and helping him found the Walden Woods Environmental Project. She is married today to Johan Kugelberg, with a daughter and stepson, and is 70 today. Athena flew Vipers into battle without hesitation. Maren Jensen flew straight out of Hollywood and built an entire beauty empire almost nobody watching this show ever heard she was behind. Before we get to the reveal almost nobody in this fandom saw coming, a question for the comments. Which Battlestar Galactica visual do you remember most vividly? The Cylon Raiders, the Golden Viper cockpits, or Adama's bridge? Tell me below. I read every one. If you're enjoying the channel, please subscribe. A cast scattered across 5 decades of Hollywood takes real research to get right. Obituaries, marriage records, court filings, all of it verified before a single line gets written. Your subscription is what keeps that work possible. Noah Hathaway, who played Boxy, the son Serena left behind when her character died in the show's first handful of episodes. If Jensen's second act was the one nobody talks about, Hathaway's is the one everybody remembers, just not from this show. He was 6 when the show premiered, born Noah Leslie Hathaway in Los Angeles, California, on November 13, 1971, and had been acting in commercials since he was 3. Boxy had to learn to trust an entirely new family in the space of a few episodes. Noah Hathaway grew from that role directly into becoming one of the most recognized child actors on the planet. Here's the reveal most casual viewers never connect. In 1984, at just 12 years old, Hathaway played the title role of Atreyu in The Never-Ending Story, becoming a massive teen idol across Europe, though he later revealed most of his dialogue in that very film had actually been dubbed by a different actor without his knowledge at the time. An injury ended a promising dance career in his late teens, so he pivoted into amateur Muay Thai fighting and motorcycle racing, and now co-owns a tattoo shop with his wife. Both of them wear tattooed wedding rings instead of metal ones, a decision he has since admitted he would not make twice. He is 54 today. Boxy said goodbye to his mother in the very first episodes of this show. Noah Hathaway grew up to headline one of the most beloved fantasy films ever made, then walked away from Hollywood entirely to build a life with his hands instead. Dirk Benedict, who played Lieutenant Starbuck, the fleet's charming, reckless gambler. Where Hathaway rebuilt his life with his fists and a tattoo gun, Benedict rebuilt his with something far stranger: a bowl of grain and a refusal to do what every doctor in the room told him to do. He was 33 when the show premiered, born Dirk Niewoner in Helena, Montana, on March 1, 1945, and lost his father, a lawyer, when he was only 18. Starbuck bluffed his way out of every tight spot the writers gave him. Dirk Benedict was, at almost the exact same time, trying to bluff his way past a cancer diagnosis using nothing but food. Here's what most fans never fully absorbed. In his early 30s, Benedict was diagnosed with a prostate tumor, refused conventional treatment entirely, and credits his survival to a strict macrobiotic diet given to him by his Butterflies Are Free co-star, Gloria Swanson. He went on to even bigger fame playing Faceman on the A-Team. He married actress Toni Hudson in 1986. 1946. After their 1995 divorce, he won custody of their two sons and raised them alone in a 900-square-foot log cabin in Montana, still following the same diet. He later publicly criticized the 2004 reboot's decision to reimagine Starbuck as a woman, a feud that eventually cooled into a good-natured photo with the new Starbuck, captioned, "Starbuck with Starbuck at Starbucks." He is 81 today. Starbuck talked his way out of death in every single episode. Dirk Benedict has spent 50 years insisting he talked his own way out of it too, one bowl of grain at a time. John Colicos, who played the traitorous Count Baltar, the man who sold humanity out to the Cylons. Where Benedict spent his life fighting to be believed, Colicos spent his fighting to make audiences believe the worst about him. On purpose, for a living. He was 49 when the show premiered, born in Toronto, Ontario on December 10, 1928, to Greek immigrant parents, and had become the youngest actor ever to play King Lear at London's Old Vic. Baltar betrayed an entire species for personal survival. John Colicos had already built a career finding the humanity inside characters written to have none at all. What most fans never realized is that Colicos had originated the Klingon Commander Kor on the original Star Trek in 1967, a role so beloved that Deep Space Nine brought him back to reprise it 3 decades later, playing the same character at 140 years old. One character spanning 3 decades of television, a feat matched by almost no one in the franchise outside Leonard Nimoy. He also spent years playing the villainous Mikos Cassadine on the soap opera General Hospital, and was, in one small piece of trivia fans still bring up, the very last character ever shot and killed on the original run of Gunsmoke. He married Mona McHenry. He died in his hometown of Toronto on March 6, 2000, following a series of heart attacks at 71. Baltar's betrayal echoed across the entire Galactica fleet. John Colicos spent 5 decades making sure every villain he ever played felt like a fully reasoned man, not just a monster with a good line. Lorette Spang, who played Cassiopeia, the fleet's medtech. Where Colicos built a career playing men audiences were meant to distrust, Spang almost didn't get a career at all. She was so broke in the months before this show that she'd already been evicted from her apartment. She was 27 when the show premiered, born Lorette Michelle Spanglet in Buffalo, New York, on May 16, 1951, and had spent years as a Universal contract player picking up small guest roles before her money finally ran out. Cassiopeia started the show as a socialator, the colony's polite word for an escort. Lorette Spang very nearly wasn't in the show at all. Here's the twist almost nobody remembers. In an early draft of the pilot script, Cassiopeia was going to be killed and eaten by the insectoid Ovions before the story even properly began, and only a rewrite spared her. She married actor John McCook in 1980, best known as Eric Forrester on The Bold and the Beautiful, and the two are still married today, over 4 decades later, with 3 children, including actress Molly McCook, who has built her own career in television. Spang largely stepped away from acting after 1984. Cassiopeia was nearly cut from this story before it even started. Lorette Spang instead built the longest, quietest, and by far the most stable marriage of anyone on this entire cast. Herbert Jefferson Jr., who played Lieutenant Boomer, one of the Galactica's most trusted Viper pilots. Where Spang's story is about being rescued by this show, Jefferson's is about a role he almost never got at all, for reasons that had nothing to do with him. He was 32 when the show premiered, born in Sandersville, Georgia, on September 28, 1946, and was raised in Jersey City, New Jersey, working as a mail assistant for ABC TV, including for a young news producer named Peter Jennings, before deciding to study acting himself. Boomer was one of the 3rd musketeers of the fleet, alongside Apollo and Starbuck. Herbert Jefferson Jr. only got the part because of an accident that happened to somebody else entirely. Here's what most fans never connect. Jefferson trained under Lee Strasberg at the Actors Studio, graduated with honors from the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and beat out dozens of other actors for the role of Boomer, a part that had actually first been offered to a different cast member before a last-minute injury changed everything. He went on to Galactica 1980, guest roles on Apollo 13 and Outbreak, and has spent over 25 years volunteering with the Special Olympics and the Marine Corps' Toys for Tots program. He lives in Southern California today. Boomer was always the calm, capable third piece of the Galactica's tightest friendship. Herbert Jefferson Jr. built a second, much quieter career out of that same steadiness, just off camera, for people who needed it more than a television audience ever did.
Terry Carter, who played Colonel Ty, Adama's loyal second-in-command, and the man on the other end of the accident that gave Jefferson his role in the first place. He was 49 when the show premiered. Born John Everett DeCoste in Brooklyn, New York on December 16, 1928, to parents of Dominican, Argentine, and African-American descent, and had served in the U.S. Merchant Marine before acting ever entered his life. Colonel Ty kept the Galactica's bridge running with quiet discipline. Terry Carter had spent 2 entire decades quietly breaking barriers most television historians still cite today. Here's the part that connects directly back to Boomer. Carter was originally cast as Lieutenant Boomer, not Ty, until a roller skating accident broke his ankle just before filming began, handing the role to Herbert Jefferson Jr. instead. Long before that, Carter had been one of the first black actors to hold a regular role on an American sitcom, playing Private Sugarman on The Phil Silvers Show for 92 episodes starting in 1955, and later became New England's first black television news anchor at Boston's WBZ-TV. In 1979, he formed the Council for Positive Images, a nonprofit devoted to intercultural understanding through media. He married Ediferhu Zenebe in 2009 and had one son, Miguel. He died peacefully at his home in Manhattan on April 23, 2024, at 95. A broken ankle, a recast role, a sitcom breakthrough, a news anchor's desk nobody like him had sat behind before. Terry Carter spent his whole career being the steady hand behind moments in television history far bigger than this show ever gave him credit for, and lived to see nearly all of them properly remembered before he died. Number 11 is the last name on this list, and the one whose real family story might be the most remarkable in this entire cast. Anne Lockhart played Lieutenant Sheba, a fierce Viper pilot written specifically for her after she turned down a weaker role the network first offered. Where Carter's story closes out this cast's past, Lockhart's is the one still being written. She was 24 when the show premiered, born Anne Kathleen Maloney in New York City on September 6, 1953, the daughter of actress June Lockhart and granddaughter of stage actors Jean and Kathleen Lockhart, a fourth generation of performers stretching back to a great-grandfather who sang in English music halls. Sheba proved herself as tough as any of the men flying beside her. Anne Lockhart had already spent her entire childhood on the sets of Lassie, watching her own mother do the exact same thing. Here's what makes her story impossible to separate from her family's. There's a persistent Hollywood rumor that director John Carpenter wanted Lockhart for the lead role in Halloween that same year, a part that instead went to Jamie Lee Curtis and turned her into a horror icon, though Lockhart herself has said she has no memory of ever being approached or offered it at all. Her mother, June Lockhart, beloved for Lassie and Lost in Space, died on October 23, 2025, at the age of 100, barely a year before this video. Anne married Adam C. Taylor in 1986. He died in 1994, leaving her widowed with 2 children while still in her early 40s. She went on to build one of the most prolific hidden careers in Hollywood as a voice actress, appearing uncredited in The Fifth Element, Back to the Future Part 2, and Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and became an expert horsewoman, founding the Pro Celebrity Rodeo to raise money for children's charities. She is 72 today. Sheba fought to prove she belonged in a fleet built mostly of men. Anne Lockhart spent her whole life proving the same thing about a family name 100 years of Hollywood already knew, and is now the one left carrying it forward, alone. They aired their pilot on September 17, 1978, and their final episode on April 29, 1979. 1 season, 24 episodes, canceled despite strong early ratings. Today, 4 of the 11 people on this list are gone. A commander who died mid-promise of one more homecoming. A captain who spent his whole life trying to bring this franchise back from the dead. A villain who made every monster he played feel human. And a colonel who quietly broke more barriers in American television than almost anyone remembers. 7 are still here. Jane Seymour is 75 and still working. Dirk Benedict is 81, still convinced grain saved his life. Maren Jensen, Noah Hathaway, Lorette Spang, and Herbert Jefferson Jr. are all still with us too. And Anne Lockhart, at 72, is the only one left carrying 4 generations of her own family's legacy on her shoulders, barely a year after losing the woman who started it. The fleet in this show was always searching for a place called Earth. Most of the people who searched for it on screen ended up finding entirely different lives once the cameras finally stopped rolling.